about the future of NATO?
I think there's no doubt, unfortunately, after this conflict is concluded, we are going to have to re-examine that relationship. We're going to have to re-examine the value of NATO and that alliance for our country. Ultimately, that's a decision for the president to make, and he'll have to make it. But I do think, unfortunately, we are going to have to re-examine whether or not this...
2 weeks. That is what he said about Iran. 2 weeks and America is done. 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe 2, maybe 3. Doesn't make any difference. If that sounds familiar, it should, because James O'Brien and Simon Marks go back through the tape, and the number 2 weeks has been attached to things that never happened, deadlines that were never met, and promises that were quietly forgotten the moment they passed. Before we get into this, subscribe to the Public Cross-Exam. If careful, evidence-led analysis of public arguments is what you are looking for, this is the channel for it. In this exchange on LBC, O'Brien is speaking with correspondent Simon Marks. The conversation moves quickly: Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and then something much bigger: Trump signaling to the Daily Telegraph that the United States may be heading for the exit on NATO. Marks does not treat any of this as noise. He traces the pattern, the shifting timelines, the unclaimed objectives, the mess being left behind and handed to other countries to clean up. And he makes the case that what looks like chaos may not be accidental. At one point, the discussion shifts, and the framing of the question itself becomes the issue. Let's go through the exchange, and then I'll give my thoughts at the end.
Have you been deported?
No, I'm here voluntarily and willingly. Let me say, very willingly.
Good.
For a few days. And it is a joy to be here, James.
Oh, well, it's always lovely to see you. It really is. What's happened since I came on air this morning?
We know, of course, that President Trump has sort of fired the sounding klaxon on his decision to withdraw the United States from NATO, that we should definitely talk about. But we also know that President Trump is going to be making a primetime address to the American people tonight. We don't know exactly what he's going to say, but we do know what he told reporters in the White House yesterday, which is that in his telling of the story, we are now approaching the beginning of the end of America's military excursion, as he likes to call it, to Iran.
I would say that within 2 weeks, maybe 3.
The U.S. will be gone or done with the war in 2
I think
weeks?
with 2 or 3 weeks.
Not 3 weeks. If it is
we'll
3
leave.
weeks.
We'll leave, he says, Jack.
How many weeks?
2 to 3 weeks.
It's like deja vu all over again.
I will make that decision, I would say, over the next 2 weeks. Someday you'll be reading about it, maybe in 100 years from now, maybe in 2 weeks. Whether it's next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, doesn't make any difference. And we're asking every American to make major changes to reduce social interactions over the next 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, you'll see numbers. The peak, the highest point of death rates, remember this, is likely to hit in 2 weeks. If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks. I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks.
So you can take it to the bank.
Well, I'm just thinking we could work our way through them. This was the BBC, but I ain't got the staff. Peter Cook didn't have the Latin. I haven't got the staff to go through how many of those deadlines or deliveries were actually achieved with.
I think I could probably answer the question pretty quickly. I think it might be a big round number.
Absolutely none of them. Here's the thing, Simon. This speech tonight, this address, this national address about what they've described as an important update on Iran, you and I have been following this more closely than most because that's our job. And yet, neither of us really would want to stake a month's wages on him either announcing that he's won and it's all over and they're all coming home, or announcing that it's won and it's all over but he's sending troops to occupy Karg Island.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I would stake a month's wages on him saying that he's won.
Oh,
I think he's definitely going to say that. But what he says after that, I think, is open to question. And just on the 2 to 3 weeks issue, his own Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, was saying yesterday, could go on for another 4 weeks, could be another 6 weeks, could be another 8 weeks. It's all undetermined. I mean, this war has been extemporised by the President of the United States from the moment the authorization was given to the Pentagon to go ahead and launch an attack that, in Secretary of State Marco Rubio's telling, was, of course, a direct result of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying to the United States, I'm going in whether you're coming with me or not, and the United States deciding that they needed to go in with him because they didn't want American troops facing reprisals for military action that only the Israelis had taken. Now, of course, the Secretary of State unconvincingly walked those claims back.
Still feasible,
24
right?
hours later. Feasible.
Yeah.
Oh, more than feasible.
I
think if you attached Marco Rubio to a lie detector, it's clear that what he said, that the first telling of the story was accurate. So now Donald Trump finds himself, he's paddling a barbed wire canoe. He's looking for an off-ramp. He needs to find an off-ramp because so much international pressure is being placed on him, and because of the situation regarding oil prices and the price of petrol. And that situation regarding oil prices is what makes the next claim that he is making so extraordinary, because he appears now to be saying, and perhaps he'll say this in the address tonight, that reopening the Strait of Hormuz, demining it, clearing it, preventing the Iranians from continuing to restrict tanker traffic through that strategic waterway is not his problem. It's the problem of other people to solve. Take a listen to what he said yesterday about the Strait of Hormuz.
It's not like you're taking out an army or you're taking out a country or they can drop it. Or you can take a machine gun from the shore and shoot a few bullets at a ship. Or maybe an over-the-shoulder missile, small missiles. That's not for us. That'll be for France. That'll be for whoever's using the strait.
It's not for us. That's not a major military deployment. It's not for the world's most powerful military. So once again, diminishing European militaries. Let France clear it. Let the UK clear it. Let the countries that actually use the Strait of Hormuz clear it, because he is right to point to the fact that only 2% of America's energy supplies transit through the Strait of Hormuz. But of course, he behaves as though the global price of oil is not set by the market, and as if it's not. I have no concern about the Strait of Hormuz. Other people can go in and clear it because it doesn't have any relevance to us.
Good luck with
but
that.
It does have relevance to every motorist paying $4 a gallon for gas.
And the average American will understand that for all the gaslighting that Trump will continue to engage in.
Even if they don't, they'll soon figure it out because they'll have to carry on paying the higher prices.
We took a call last week. I don't know if I gave it enough credit at the time, from somebody who was pointing out Trump's entire life has been typified by expecting other people to clear up his mess. Whether, Roy Cohn would it have been at one point, and other people, his father would have bailed him out as well, and various, they went to Russian banks to get money after all the American banks had this. I think we can rely upon his own son for telling us this, probably indiscreetly, after American banks refused to lend to them, Russian banks would do so. So he's always not only expected other people to clean up after him, but he would simultaneously deny that he has made the mess that other people are required to clean up. And it struck me this morning, remembering that call, that this is just another example of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is staggering to imagine that you can go in alongside Israel, attack Iran, create complete international, a massive global economic crisis, not achieve at least one of your stated aims, which was regime change and the rising up of the Iranian people to take matters into their own hands. Instead, you claim that because the regime has changed in the sense that it's got a different supreme leader than it had a few weeks ago and may yet have another supreme leader further down the line, that is regime change. I mean, by no stretch of the imagination can events in Iran be described as regime change. So you create an unholy mess.
Sorry, I never correct you, but you're wrong. What you meant to say was that in no circumstances can what's happened in Iran be accurately described.
Right,
because
correct,
they're going to
of course,
bloody describe it as a regime change.
Precisely. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the corrective. Can accurately be described as regime change. But what you've done is create this unholy mess on the world stage and then basically said, I mean, we were being told over the weekend in Washington he's bored of it. Yeah. He's bored. He wants to move on. He's tired. Doesn't want to focus on it anymore. And so everybody else now, including the UK, has to contemplate the long-term damage of this, because if he leaves things the way they are, if he doesn't go for a much more punitive series of actions and possibly the very risky deployment of ground forces in Kharg Island, the Iranians have made it absolutely clear there's no return to the status quo ante for the Strait of Hormuz. They are going to charge tolls, $2 million a tanker, for any ship that wants to transit the waterway, unless, you know, they come from China, maybe Pakistan, countries that are willing to do deals.
Malaysia apparently has got a freebie at the moment.
$2 million a pop. Yeah. And that is how the regime is going to line its own pockets and rebuild its inner strength, further undercutting the Iranian people that you claimed on February the 28th you wanted to. This is your time. This is your moment of action.
Of course, that hasn't been achieved.
Of course, absolutely not. And the only objective he can point to that has been achieved is the one that was already achieved before the military action began, which is Iran is not getting a nuclear weapon. Well, we knew that because, I mean, there's no... Even his own intelligence community says Iran was not getting a nuclear weapon. So, yes, he is expecting...
That's the thing they cling to. I don't get many texts from, blithering idiots on this subject, but there is obviously somewhere on the internet there is an argument that goes like, oh, so you want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, do you? And it demonstrates levels of ignorance that are almost Brexit-like in their boneheadedness. But it exists as an argument. It's just not getting any traction anywhere, really, except in the darker recesses.
Within the corridors of the US government, it got no traction, except in the Oval Office and in the office of Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, and Secretary of State, who probably knew but turned a blind eye to it, because that's what you do if you serve in the Trump administration.
Well, you have to do.
And speaking of the Secretary of State, we should take a listen to what Marco Rubio said last night about the future of NATO.
I think there's no doubt, unfortunately, after this conflict is concluded, we are going to have to re-examine that relationship. We're going to have to re-examine the value of NATO and that alliance for our country. Ultimately, that's a decision for the president to make, and he'll have to make it. But I do think, unfortunately, we are going to have to re-examine whether or not this alliance that has served this country well for a while is still serving that purpose.
And, of course, the president has basically told the Daily Telegraph overnight he's made the decision. And that is why this is, I think, in many ways, the biggest day in all of our lives, because none of us, of our generation, has lived in an era in which the American protective security blanket provided by NATO wasn't operative. And when the Prime Minister was questioned today about the future of NATO and American involvement in it, and absolutely restated his adherence to the core principles of NATO and the benefits of NATO, where he notably didn't go was explaining what NATO looks like if the Americans are out. And the Americans, in Donald Trump's own telling in those comments to the Daily Telegraph this morning, look like they're heading for the exit.
But it's Donald Trump.
Yes. I mean,
so he might give himself the NATO Peace Prize tomorrow.
There's another throwaway comment, though, in that interview with the Telegraph, where he says, NATO's a paper tiger. And it's not just me that thinks it.
Oh, no.
Vladimir Putin thinks so as well. He knows it as well. And if you're sitting in Ukraine reading that, as if you're sitting in the Foreign Office reading that,
what Putin's told him.
You should be very concerned about it, because it really underscores this notion that when he said over, I've lost track of the dates, a couple of days ago, when he said of the UK, we will not be there when you need us. That's a real threat. You know, this Nigel Farage line that you should not take him literally, you should take him seriously, I always disagree with.
I think he might
You
have
should take him
line.
Literally.
Yes, of course you should. That's been clear to everybody with a brain, which means that Nigel Farage possibly hasn't realised it yet. Can he do it, though? I mean, that you've got, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm plucking this from my memory banks, but you have the National Defence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024, which prohibits the president from withdrawing the United States from NATO without the approval of the Senate or statutory authorization. I mean, we're talking about Donald Trump, who's done lots and lots of things he's not allowed to do. In his personal life, in his private life, in his public life, in his political life. So the question might be moot, but it would be quite hard to get this through Congress, wouldn't it? Or the Senate?
If he bothers. If he bothers.
Just announces we're not in NATO anymore and cancels the direct debits.
I do think the fact that Rubio voiced it there last night, was on Fox News last night,
I hadn't thought of that.
Sounded like that was the beginning of the move, the beginning of the Secretary of State, laying the groundwork on Capitol Hill and saying this is going to happen. And it was unthinkable in the first term that he would be able to withdraw from NATO even if he wanted to, because he was surrounded by people who would restrain him, particularly in the National Security Council. And now, as we've said time and again, there is no restraining influence in that inner circle.
I hope you're wrong. Because we're back then to the question of whether or not he's some sort of Manchurian candidate, or whether or not the compromat that Vladimir Putin has on him is such that he is now going to withdraw the United States from NATO, which in the great scheme of geopolitical things must count as Vladimir Putin's greatest dream.
And I mean, trebles all round in the Kremlin, even through the mere suggestion that he's now considering this. It is, of course, it's a catastrophe for the historic tapestry of collective security in Europe. It forces every single European government onto the back foot. And also, we've got another, 2.5 years of this to go, even if there is a transfer of power in Washington, D.C., and even if a new president arrives who is committed to the NATO alliance, how is Europe ever going to be in a position to believe a president who, like Joe Biden says, America is back?
You've done it. You've made me understand something I didn't previously understand, because I haven't shared your understanding or your depth of concern about this. And this is why Mark Rutte has behaved in such a horribly sycophantic fashion, because he thinks it's a real possibility.
Well, I mean, the only person who can talk him down, as far as we can tell, is Mark Rutte.
Yeah.
And he has gone so far out on a limb.
Know why.
I mean, he was on TV in the US about 10 days ago, urging American voters to get behind Donald Trump's Iran campaign because they needed to understand that it was all about strengthening American national security. His memoir is going to be the most fascinating book to read if it reveals whether he's really a Trump fanboy or he just plays one on TV.
It seems unlikely that he really is. I mean, people who aren't sure, he's the Dutch politician, Dutchman, and the Secretary General of NATO since October 2024, former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, who has come in for a lot of stick from satirists and commentators alike. Did he call him daddy at one point?
At one point, yeah. But now coming in for a lot of stick from NATO members for saying what he said in that American TV interview, because he went so far off the reservation, but presumably felt he needed to do so in order to attract the attention of the president.
And this is why the question of, good Lord, why he has been doing it might just have been answered, because he was the first to see that the threat of leaving NATO is both real and now present.
Can I make one other point about all of this, which is that we ought to bear in mind always that the national security strategy of the Trump administration makes it official government policy to undermine governments in Europe that the Trump administration considers not to be led by patriotic European leaders. And by that, they obviously don't mean the Prime Minister, and they obviously don't mean Kemi Badenoch. They obviously mean, in this country's case, Nigel Farage and Reform UK. And I think as you look at this Iran adventure, it would be worth remembering that the upheaval that this is causing, our government, the French government, the German government, governments all over Western Europe, may not be simply an ancillary benefit to the Trump administration. It may also be part of the whole plan of continuing to undermine democratically elected governments in Europe that Donald Trump thinks are led by, as he has characterised them, a bunch of losers.
Yeah, which he doesn't really think at all. He's just following a sort of game plan that has been imposed from without, and just don't know whether it's coming from the Christian evangelicals or the Kremlin, or because he hasn't come up with this idea himself. If he thought that popularity or status lay in being woke, he'd be the wokest man in America.
Well, it's all part of Project 2025. It's the whole plan playing out in real time, as it was written down.
Nobody who was paying attention should be surprised by the 2 weeks. It was never a timeline. It was a phrase, one attached to so many different claims in so many different contexts that it stopped meaning anything a long time ago. And yet it keeps coming. The clock keeps getting reset, and the press keeps reporting it as though this time it might actually mean something. That pattern is important because it tells you exactly how this presidency operates, not through strategy, through volume. Enough noise delivered fast enough that nobody can keep track of what was promised, what was walked back, and what simply vanished. Marx traces it cleanly here. The Iran war was improvised from the moment the order was given. No clear objective, no prepared public. And now the president is apparently bored of it, wants to move on, which means the UK, France, and European allies are left holding the damage of a conflict they had no hand in starting. The Strait of Hormuz argument is worth pausing on. Trump said plainly clearing it is not America's problem. 2% of American energy goes through it. Let France handle it. That figure may be accurate, but oil prices are not set by destination. They are set by global supply. Block the strait, charge $2 million a tanker, and every American driver pays more at the pump. That is not an abstract foreign policy question. That is a number on a receipt. Then there is NATO. Marx calls this the biggest day of their lives. Rubio going on Fox News to lay the groundwork framing NATO as something that needs re-examining. That is not a casual comment. That is preparation. And the point that lands hardest is this. Even if Trump is replaced, even if a new president arrives and says, America is back, how does Europe ever fully believe that again? The trust, once broken at this level, does not simply return because the face in the Oval Office changes. And Marx ends on something that reframes the entire conversation. The disruption this is causing across Western Europe may not be collateral damage. It may be the point. Project 2025 playing out exactly as written. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is the NATO threat real, or is this another 2-week deadline that quietly disappears? If this kind of breakdown is useful, subscribe to the Public Cross Exam. Thanks for watching.